Alrighty, we are live.
Awesome, awesome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the 22nd as we near the end of Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I have myself and Dr. Douglas, which I'll give an opportunity for her to spit her resume. But for many of us, when it comes to men's mental health and sometimes taking that first step to therapy, we're always looking for how to do it. For me, I was one of those people. I didn't have this resource, so I'm hoping today will be a great resource. Um, by the way, my name is Jelani Nate, the founder of Black Men Hike. For the people that know, we've been a nonprofit since 2022, and one of the programs that we do have is a therapy program, which we call the Whole Wellness Program. And essentially, this year in 2026, we partnered with Dr. Douglas in the weight room, and you know, we thought what better way to kind of end the month and have an opportunity to speak with one of our therapist providers, service providers, and provide opportunity for you guys to learn more, ask some questions. But without further ado, happy to be here, and I would like to introduce Dr. Patrice Douglas. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Really quick, because we're streaming on multiple things. Johnny, make sure on the we're streaming on your account.
Okay, yes, let's do that.
You might have to go back to the desktop thing and hit go live on
Bear
the
with me.
on the
I'm like
on
a
the IG. Listen,
seasoned.
no, all of us are figuring this
we
out.
we're here now, but
We
yeah,
here, we
appreciate
here. I want to make
the
sure, yeah,
patience
it's on their page.
for sure. So I think we are live now. Okay, I see some folks have joined.
Okay, we're good on your page.
I
Yes, we are.
believe so.
All right,
Yes.
we are good. But if you guys missed the introduction, you can we'll give it to you. But no, I'm really excited to be here. I am Dr. Patrice. I am a licensed psychologist and marriage and family therapist. And I am the CEO and founder of The Weight Room. We are a full mental health practice for Black and Brown boys and men across 6 states. We are a virtual practice. As far as me, I pretty much do everything in mental health but prescribe medications. But I can educate you on the medications. I just can't send you to the pharmacy to get them. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And the partnership that we've had with Black Men Height has been amazing. And so for June, it's Men's Health Month. We dub it as Men's Mental Health Month. I think the conversation that we are going to have is really important to some of the things that maybe we kind of shadow over. We don't really talk about. We talk about go to therapy, but we don't talk about actually getting into therapy or if you're ready for therapy. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Where do you want to start?
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for the introduction, and again, thank you for the great work that you do,
Thank
and
you.
the lovely partnership that we have. We're super happy to be a part of this. All right, so let's just start. From the beginning. You know, we talk about why, and kind of getting to know like what mental health is and all that type of stuff. So let's just start from the beginning, keep it basic. When we talk about Black Men Hike, I think when some people hear Black Men Hike, they think, okay, that's just a great opportunity to like get out in nature, right, and work on your
Yes.
physical health, right. And for some, they might understand the mental health aspect to that, but many might not. So for the folks who might not have that, connection between nature and mental wellness, um, can you kind of explain the how physical movement and brotherhood can play into mental health, and then is it kind of its own form of therapy?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times when we talk about things being therapy, I think we kind of interchange it with therapeutic, right? So like working out, connecting with people, even being a foodie, like those things can bring a lot of joy and a lot of fulfillment, like in your heart and your soul. But when we talk about therapy, it's not the same, right? When we talk about therapy, we're talking about really getting to the root of a lot of different things that could be going on in your life. I think a lot of times in therapy, people automatically assume that we're going to talk about your childhood. Sometimes that may come up depending on the type of therapy that you're looking for. We may not even go down, that path. It may be a little bit not more surface, but more present in the life part that we address. The physical aspect of wellness is really important. I mean, I think in the weight room, we always encourage, our clients to not just use like our talk space as the space to like get all of like your well-being and your health. We actually encourage you to connect with friends, even network, find friends, work out. The physical element is really important because our mental and our physical are connected. So usually if one is out of whack, it's impacting the other. And so I think it's really important that we do both. I think sometimes in a conversation, because maybe we're a little fearful of like what therapy can bring out, or we're just not ready to get into those things, or we're just not a talkative type of person, we kind of lean more into like, I just need the gym. Like I've run into so many guys that are just like, I got the gym, my dumbbell press is, been increasing. I be in the gym for 4 or 5 hours. And I'm like, yeah, you feel good. You have that adrenaline high. But when you come out of the gym and you go home and you drink that nasty protein shake that you're about to drink, whatever you're about to do,
Right.
like, are you still feeling better? And that's when it's like, not really, right? And so
Okay.
we don't want to always feel like we have to pick one or the other, but a balance is really helpful. But I will say for Black men specifically, and definitely getting more involved in your organization, the brotherhood that you guys have built, as well as what other brothers have developed, that really keeps them grounded. It really keeps them like, things are not maybe working out the way that I want to, but I have a means to want to keep trying, and that's because I got my bros. So brotherhood is very
Mhm.
important when we're talking about mental health as well.
I appreciate that. And, you know, I came from that same background. So um, just kind of understanding and through my own journey, when I got out of nature, I was like, oh, okay. You know what? This physical movement, like heart moving, but also having the opportunity to kind of just like look around and connect. I really got out of my head and kind of got a chance to recharge. And um, the brotherhood piece came on, and being
Mhm.
out in nature is just an extra additive. So um, that kind of leads me into my next question, where many of us, you know, before we might seek therapy or even like get outdoors and really work on our mental health, you know, speaking for myself, I came from a background like just kind of man up, right? Like as a
Mhm.
man, you deal with stuff and you kind of got to get through it, right?
Mhm.
Um, or barbershop talk sometimes would work, and just having community, right? Which is a way to kind of talk through your problems and get solutions as well. But what's the difference between like talking to your brothers or manning up versus like actually getting on the couch and or on a computer and have a virtual session with a therapist?
Yeah, so I think one of the misconceptions that comes with being a clinician is that we give advice, right? When we're talking to our friends, like my girlfriends or whatever, the homies, like, they're giving their input about what they feel is best for you, right? They swear they know you up and down, like, I know you, that's not going to work for you. This is what you should do. But there's also like that spectrum of like, they also affirm of like, that's a lot going on in your life. We're here for you. That's a support. that can be different compared to therapy, where we're actually finding a solution or talking about a solution that actually works for you, that is not aligned with like what everybody feels like you should be doing in your life. It's actually what you should be doing for yourself. And so sometimes when we conflate the two of like therapy is kind of like talking to the homie, or it's the same thing as talking to my homie, we're
Mhm.
missing out on some valuable stuff that can happen, that is just a vulnerable moment between you and one other person that has no other stake in your life other than just supporting your well-being. At the end
Mm.
of the day, our friends are biased. That's just what it is. They're going to either encourage you to do something that they would do or what they think you should be doing. In therapy, we are formulating a type of plan that you are
Mm.
going to implement, and you're going to see if it works for you or it's not going to work for you. Or we're going to come up with solutions because now we found the root of the problem, which may not just be this isolated thing. It may have had like what I call generational issues that have now came to the surface, but you're not going to always be vulnerable in ways to talk to your friends like that. And so
Mm.
that's where the difference comes in therapy, is like we're actually doing some internal work versus like, barbershop talk, or, talking to your friends, where we're just in the moment vibing and, talking about this, but there's really may not be the solution that is going to help you overall.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that for me was a big thing, right? When you're talking to family and friends, they know a portion of you, right? And
Yes.
sometimes they don't. I feel like they don't sometimes like overlap, right? Like my friends might
Yes.
have a different perspective than my parents, right? Or my coworkers, or whatever the case is, whoever you're confiding in. And
Mhm.
sometimes, some of the things that we're going to is because of all these different things. So I think, to your point, having somebody that's dedicated to really you and what that
Mhm.
looks like from now until maybe when you first came out the womb.
Right.
You know, I think that's important to really get the full picture of who you are for ourselves, and also to help you know have a successful experience with therapy. So
Did you
for go
personally
ahead.
notice the difference? Like talking to your friends compared to like going therapy, of like there's like a different experience that's happening in this room or
Mhm.
virtual that I don't think I would ever want to even take it there with people that I know and love. Because there's just things that we just don't want people to know about
For
ourselves.
sure.
So
Yeah.
we're only gonna go so far in telling like our friends things, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think for me, depending on what you're going through, especially with men, like, there's a lot of pride that we hold and ego. So, there's certain things that you might not feel comfortable. You might feel embarrassed about talking with your friends, or less than, or whatever the case is. I think for me, having the opportunity to really like speak about who I am,
Mm-hmm.
and be open, and not having to worry about let's say, me telling my sister, and then she might tell my other sister jokingly, right? But certain things that might just be a joke or something, having that conversation with a therapist, there's no judgment, right? And the
Right.
main goal, at least for me, I thought, or think, is that you know is to help you, right? So um, yeah, I would agree that there's truly a difference when you can be able to meet somebody and know that, one, there's confidentiality, and understanding that, hey, I can say whatever I want to say, whatever's on my mind. I might not have been able to tell my homeboy, I might have been able to tell him ABC, right? But
Yes.
now I can also speak on DEF, right? And I think that's a great thing about therapy, at least what I've experienced thus far. So
That's good to hear.
cool, cool. I mean, and honestly, with that being said, like, for somebody who might have never experienced therapy and might be interested in therapy, what do you think the ultimate goal is, from a therapist perspective? And what would you say is a successful therapy section, or session, or interaction?
Yeah, so I think like therapy is goal oriented, right? So we're coming in and there's a problem or a concern that you want to address, and we are actually making a whole plan on how to address that, right? It can even be as small as like um you're having anxious thoughts every day of the week, and we want to get that down to twice a week, right? And so we're doing different like interventions, or we're having different conversations to maybe isolate what's the anxiety coming from, or how to make your anxiety a little bit more comfortable. Like a lot of times I think people think we're trying to like eliminate things. We're really just trying to manage a lot of stuff. Like sometimes when we say I've overcome depression or anxiety, I get a little like, what does that mean? Because are we saying like it's never going to exist again? Yeah, you might go in remission. It may be manageable. You're not noticing it, but like that stuff is still in the background somewhere, and a trigger can bring it to the forefront. So, a successful type of session, in my opinion, looks like we're having conversations and we're trying different things to help you get to a place where you feel comfortable in whatever it is that's bothering you. Sometimes that can take a lot, like, right? Sometimes you got to stay in
Mm-hmm.
therapy
Mm-hmm.
long. Sometimes you can get it done in like 6 to 8 sessions. It just depends on the concern. And what I love about the work that I do, being a Black clinician, is that I definitely bring culture into the room. So,
Huge.
so even though like I may be talking like this to you because I'm black. We chopping it up. Like I'm really giving you things that are psychologically or behaviorally helpful, but I'm bringing it in a way where it doesn't feel very like textbook, right? Because I think that's the thing too. We want to feel like we're engaging and connecting with our therapist, where it feels like a conversation, but things are happening. So success to me looks like we had a conversation. I always check at the end of session, like, how did you feel about what we talked about today? What did you get out of this session today? What would you like to work on for our time away from each other? Because a lot of times I think people think like that 1 hour a week or every other week is like that's it. But no, like you're going to be doing the majority of the work outside of the therapy room. So
Sure.
it's like, are we leaving the session where you feel at least motivated or confident enough to be able to try these things and then come back to me and tell me how it's working? Or are there some other things that we need to do to make you feel comfortable in that way? So when a client comes to me, because sometimes I think people, they think like we're gonna like, I don't know, like beat them up or something if they want to stop therapy, or they feel like they have what what they gotten, when they're like, I feel like I've met my goals. I feel like, thing I came in here for, that's been addressed, and I even got more from it. They either want to, terminate therapy, which is the goal. The goal is to terminate therapy, or they want to reduce the amount of sessions. And so to me, that's successful when they can repeat back what we've been talking about and how to troubleshoot those things. I think it's successful when they're like, when I be going through stuff, like I can hear you in my head, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's how I know like therapy is being successful for you, and like you're doing what you need to do. It becomes a little bit complicated for the client if like the only time that you're ever talking about this or working on this is in the 45 to 50 minutes that we have, because
Right.
at the end of the
Right.
day, healing is really going to happen outside of the session. I'm giving you the tools to work on it, outside of that. So that's what success looks like to me, when they're like, they can repeat what I said. Sessions, maybe feel like more of a catch up than
Mm-hmm.
actually working on stuff. Or they're actually just verbalizing that they feel like they got what they needed. That's success to me.
I think you. I mean, your perspective is amazing. Because when I think about therapy, I think about tools, right? Because I think
Hmm.
life is gonna life, right? Like
Life is
there's
gonna lie.
nobody with a perfect life. So you might even go a couple years without any issues or stress or things that you might be dealing with. But I think for me, I think where I've found success is when I've have those tools to kind of get through those trials and tribulations that happen in life, right? And to your point, you know, it's nice to be able to have somebody that you can call and maybe have a maintenance checkup, right? There's some things
Yes.
that you might be going through a few things, these years of your life, and maybe the next year or 6 months later, you might have another issue that you might not have the tools for.
Hmm.
But you still have that foundation, and being able to still reach out to your therapist and get that maintenance session, whether it's 1 or 6, whatever the case
Yeah.
is. I think is the beautiful thing. It never ends unless you want it to, right?
Right.
Um, And just because it ends does not mean that you don't have the tools to kind of get through, what you need to do in the future.
Absolutely. I think that's the scary part that black men, often talk to me about. They're like, so I gotta stick with you forever. And I'm like, the goal is for you not to.
Yeah.
I'm here for as long as you need me, but I'm not trying to be in a retirement home with you. Like, I hope that's not what it comes down to, but I'm here for as long as you want. And sometimes for therapy, like some people come in, we call it solution focus or short term therapy, can be like 6 to 8 sessions. And then you got some people that are more long term. So it just depends on your goals and what you're comfortable with that you could set with your therapist to decide how long you want to be in therapy. But also, I will say, as a therapist that's honest, I'll tell you, like, you're like, I'm ready to go. I'm like, are you sure about that? I'll tell you, like, I'm not gonna stop you, but I'm gonna tell you, like, you're at a place where there's some things that still need to be worked on. If you want to take a pause or a breather, that's cool. But I at least want you to know, like, there's still some work to be done, even though you're feeling better. But ultimately, it's your decision on how long you want to stay.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to add to that, I think, especially for somebody new, especially when I think about my personal experience, but anybody that might be new might feel the same way or might have the
Mm-hmm.
same experience. You think like, oh, I got this problem,
Mm-hmm.
and as soon as I have this session, like I'm gonna have the answer, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not always the case, right? And maybe 1 or 2 sessions throughout, you might start to feel like you have the solution for that issue. But
Mm-hmm.
I think to your point, where some people might not know that, well, might think they're ready to kind of do it on their own. They might have not handled like the unpacked all the other things that might be making this a reoccurring thing in their life. So um, I appreciate you kind of giving both sides of it, right? Like, as an adult or as a person, you have the opportunity to say, you know, I think I'm good, but also, I think a great therapist is going to say, I hear you, um, but we still have some more unpacking or more sessions and stuff to do to get you to where you need to go and to be
Yeah, like a
successful.
little takeout bag. Like, all right, as your parting gift, I'm gonna give you, your aftercare plan or your discharge
Right.
papers. And anybody that's been to the doctor, or whatever, knows like there's always like instructions on what you should be doing post your appointment. It's the same thing of like termination of like this is where we're leaving it. This is what can be worked on, but it's totally up to your discretion on when you're ready to work on those things.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the response. So, for our IG Live today, we have about 4 phases. We kind of just went through the first phase, which was really just an introduction, kind of breaking the ice, kind of, letting people know what therapy is and what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're into our like phase 2, which is kind of like the
Mm-hmm.
pre-therapy getting ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with that being said, say I'm an individual that's like, all right, I got some stuff going on. I think about my personal experience. When I had my first panic attack, I was like, I need to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, the first step was going to what I knew, which was nature, and then also add in the brotherhood piece.
Mm-hmm.
But I also knew that that wasn't the only solution for me, and that's when I decided to do individual therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, for somebody who has a moment in their life where they're like, I need therapy, um, how does a person actually know that they're ready for therapy?
Yeah, so I feel like if you're thinking about it, you're probably ready. Right? Like if it comes even across your mind, right? Or now, we say like, oh, it's the timing, it's the confirmation if we see it on Instagram. If it comes across your mind where you're like, is this something that, would be beneficial for me? More than likely it is. I think we're I'll just even say men since we're talking about men, black men specifically, I think sometimes people bombard them with like you need help, go to therapy, go to talk to somebody, you talk to somebody, that they'll go to therapy just to shut everybody up. But therapy doesn't work if you're not going for yourself, right? So if you have found yourself like, this is the thing that I bring into the sessions, and I often encourage a therapist in the weight room to do is like ask your client, what have they been already doing? Because a lot of times, especially black people, we've tried a lot of things before we're coming to talk to somebody. Like that's just what it is. Like usually if we're coming to therapy, is because like that's like the last straw, right? I'm like, I've done everything I can on my own. I probably need to bring a professional, or I need to try something else to find relief. So a lot of times in therapy, you kind of look at it like, what have I already tried that's not working, or tried and it's not working now? If you have exhausted all of the things that you can independently do, that's, working out, going to the doctor, going to bed early, cutting people off, hanging out with your friends, and all these things are still not relieving the problem, then more than likely it's time to take a step further and see what's going on. Because sometimes we don't know if it's a physical or mental issue, right? So a lot of times you can go to the doctor and they're like, I don't see nothing on your labs. And yes, we got medical mistrust. So we're like, do you not see something for real, or you playing in my face, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's literally there is nothing visible that shows on your labs or your reports, and so they usually refer to a therapist of like, this may be a mental health issue. So if you're doing all this stuff and you're not seeing results, then it's time to go talk to somebody. Or if you've been thinking about it, that means you're probably ready.
Yeah, I think the bar that I felt like was like a Jay-Z level bar was it if you're not ready to do therapy for yourself, then it's not gonna
Don't
work.
do it.
Yeah. So I think that's huge. You really have to be at a point where you're like, I want to help myself.
Yeah.
There's so many times that we do things for other people,
Mm-hmm.
and to just satisfy our friends or family or whatever, or a job, whatever the case is. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're not willing to do it, it's only going to work for so long, because it
Right.
takes work too. You have to be motivated to do it.
Yeah.
Along those lines, what would you say would be like a difference between, oh, I just had a stressful week,
Mm-hmm.
versus like, okay, I need professional support?
Yeah, so if you have like a stressful week where you're like spinning your wheels and all of that, but the next like 4 weeks or 6 weeks was fine, then yeah, it may have been a fluke in a week. But if you find yourself repetitively having that same week, you've been having deja vu, like that week keeps repeating, then obviously, it's an issue. And so sometimes people are like, I don't know if it's just situational stress or depression, or if it's like a mental health issue. You don't have to decide if it's a mental health issue versus situational. If it's something that's constantly bothering you
Mhm.
and it's impacting your ability to work, your ability to think, your ability to go to school, your ability to be social, your ability to go to sleep, then whether it's a situational thing or a chronic biological issue, you should be able to talk it out with someone that can give you the tools. At the end of the day, therapists are tools. Like in the weight room, we're called spotters. We don't even call ourselves therapists, because in the weight room, all of our lingo is weight room, and so a lot
Mhm.
of times Black men are saying like the weight of the world is heavy. That could be a stressful week, but if that weight keeps weighing on you every other week, or out of the month, you're feeling a stressful week 2 times out of the month, then that's a weight that you need help lifting, or at least learning how to lift the weight. And so that's where it becomes, if there's a pattern, this is not just a stressful week. This is like life that's kicking you in the butt, and we need to do
Sure,
something about it.
for sure. And just just kind of honing in on the fact that stress is going to be there, right?
Stress is gonna be there.
You're going to have stress. You're going to have times where you might not feel the greatest, and just because you have a bad week doesn't necessarily mean that you need to run to a therapist. But to
Right.
your point, if you're starting to say, well, last week was tough, and this week was tough, and man, I don't know if next week how that looks. Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself, okay, what do I need to do? That's not, because whatever I'm doing is not working. How do I get the help to
Whatever you're
see it?
doing is not working. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Cool,
it can be
cool.
seasonal too, right? Like we talk about
Yeah.
seasonal depression, but life
Yep.
has seasons where it's just tough. And so you can even engage in therapy from like a seasonal perspective of like, this summer, it can even be like as small as like grief, right? For some people,
Mhm.
people feel like grief is like small, but that mess is complex and it hits you out of nowhere. So like, even, yesterday being Father's Day, you could find yourself having a bad week and the weeks keep piling up. You're not even realizing that your trigger was grief,
Mm.
right? And so sometimes when we're going through things, we can't always pinpoint the root we just think it's like just one bad thing after another, or that we're not being strong enough, or
Mm,
that we're not troubleshooting enough. But it may be something that you couldn't even think was bothering you, and that's what surfaces in therapy. So yeah, if you're continuing to have issues, or you are putting a band-aid on the issue, but that band-aid keep popping off real quick, yeah, it's time to do something else than just like continue to put the band-aid on it.
for sure, for sure. With that being said, I mean, how do we find the right match? I think, you know, one, maybe you could elaborate on the importance of cultural competency. I
Hmm.
know from my perspective, you know, I feel like I need somebody that can identify with me, like kind
Yes.
of identify with what's going on, and how I feel certain catchphrases or you
Hmm.
know like keeping
You ain't got to
plastic
explain
bags.
everything of
Yeah,
like,
like just
this is
little
what I
stuff there.
mean.
It's just if you know type thing, right?
Yes.
So with that being said, along the same lines, it's like just because somebody might be a good therapist doesn't necessarily mean that person's great for you. I've had
Right.
or I've heard of people, and I've had people, suggest a certain therapist for myself to use. And when I get, have that conversation with the therapist, I realize maybe we're not connecting on the level,
Mhm.
or the communication style is different, or whatever the case is. So maybe you could elaborate on like what to look for to get the right match for you.
Yeah. So one of the terms that you use, Lonnie, cultural competency, I think we have been shifting over to cultural responsiveness, because can you truly be fully competent in a culture? I mean, even us as Black people, you and I, like, there's things in Black culture that we have no idea about, just because we learned our culture in this one specific area. But when we look at Black people, we are a variety, right? So it's really hard to say like anybody's competent in one culture, right? But what we can be is responsive to the culture. So that means we can do our research. We can educate ourselves. We can listen. And for those that are open to answering questions or being able to explain things, so be it. And so, um, one of the things that was a big thing in the last few years, especially COVID, maybe a little bit before, was like everybody needs a Black therapist. Well, if I mean, granted, on the master's level clinician side, Black therapists have risen. Like, I think we're at 6%. I think when I first graduated, we were at 4%. So we're increasing. Psychologists, we're still at 2%. And so when it comes to that, like, you need a Black therapist to understand you. I would say like that's not always the case. You can find a clinician that is not Black, and have conversations with them. Some of them do their due diligence and do their responsiveness. They educate themselves. They've taken the continuing education or different educational classes to understand. Sometimes they can get you to a place where, if, like, for example, you mentioned your panic attacks, they can be really good at addressing panic attacks. That's their specialty. But when you uncover that and this may not be your case, but for example, your panic attacks are due to some of the racism that you've experienced,
Right.
that
Right.
clinician, that may be as far as they can go, right?
Mhm.
Of like, hey, you've helped me manage my panic attacks, but I think there's a disconnect, or I'm not comfortable talking to you about this phase of what I'm uncovering about myself. And that's when we may transition to a clinician that has more of a racial trauma background, or cultural background of being Black, and can understand. So what we're looking for is, one, do we feel comfortable talking to them? And finding a therapist is kind of like dating. I'm pretty sure people have heard it before, but it's like you
Yep.
kind of gotta try a few sometimes, or it takes a couple of sessions to see if you can find a rhythm. Like, it's really hard sometimes to say like we are a perfect match the first session or second session, because the first and second session, I'm getting all your background information, I'm not really in my groove, right? So sometimes it takes a few sessions to see if we're a match. Sometimes it takes a few therapists to find the match. So what we're looking for is, do you feel comfortable talking to them? In the area that you're looking to address, do they have experience in that? Is that a specialty? um you want to know what kind of style of therapist you want. Like, do you want a therapist that, some people want the therapist that nod their head and tell me more and I see and I understand. And majority of like what they say is maybe, towards the end of the session. Then you got some people that are like, nah, I want a therapist to keep it 100 with me. So like, let's shoot. Like you say something, I say something back. And so you kind of want to ask like, what is your communication style or your techniques when it comes to addressing this concern? That's really going to be helpful. And have a conversation of like, if this is not, if I don't feel like it's working out, um is there a space for us to talk about what I'm looking for, or that I may be looking for something else? That's basically what you can do to find a therapist that you're looking for. Like I said, they can check all the boxes like on Psychology Today, but it still may not feel like a match in person or, through Zoom. And so you just got to give it a little bit of time. But I really just wanted to make sure that was clear. Like, yes, Black therapists are important, especially to Black community. But sometimes you may not want to go that route because you feel like it hits too close to home. You're like, I want somebody that's outside of my bubble to really understand me. That's okay to try that. But sometimes there may come a point where they can only meet you at a certain place. You just may have to get another therapist, and that's okay as well.
For sure. I think about myself. I've had a number of therapists like throughout my journey, and I know me personally. I look for. I'm intentional about therapists that look like me. I've had, you know, I've really got some great tools from women therapists, Black women therapists,
Mm-hmm.
and then also in other circumstances, I've gotten great feedback from Black male therapists. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I look at it like playing golf a little bit too. Sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
like you might need a driver to start off, right? But you can't use that driver when you're trying to putt the ball, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think finding the right person for the right situation is important. I think that's what's been helpful for me. And I mean, you're paying for it too. So like, if you're not happy, you could be,
Exactly.
you could be diplomatic about it and professional about it. But to your point, ask questions. And if that's not the right person, I think it's understood that not every therapist is for everybody. So.
Yeah, and also don't let that, discourage you from trying again. Like what I love about your story is like you've had, a variation of people that you've got to experience. And even if there wasn't a match, that didn't discourage you from being like, oh, therapy's just not for me because you didn't vibe with therapists or whatever. You continue to try again. And I think that's, key for a lot of men is that it's not going to always be perfect the first time, but if you really want the support and the help, it's going to take a little bit of time. So don't let one experience discourage you from continuing to try. Because there's like it's not a running joke. It's like a fact that, especially for Black men, Black women, like if you irritate them or they don't have a good experience in therapy, you have a small window to convince, like to keep going. If you mess up that window, like you're messing it up for them for, years to come. And so, yeah, I just want to encourage, like, yeah, try again. Even if you've been out of therapy for a while, like try again. Like it's okay. You will find somebody that will work for you, but you gotta let it slow marinate a little bit.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I appreciate that. Now, we kind of talked about, you know, being ready for it, therapy, trying to find the right person. But logistically, can we just kind of touch on like what it takes for therapy, right? There's a onboarding process and things like that. Maybe sharing some of that,
Yeah.
and kind of, just to give a general understanding. And also, I know maybe it could be a two-part question, but the cost of therapy can be expensive sometimes. Well, not
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. I mean, the cost of therapy, if you're paying out of pocket, can be expensive, right? So
Yeah.
maybe we could also talk about some, options, or how to kind of handle that if you're thinking about therapy, but the cost isn't a concern.
Yeah. So typically on average, like even at the weight room, what we do is, if you send like an inquiry, we call you, we ask you like what's your presenting concern, what's your availability, what's your budget, and we kind of decide or configure like if we're a fit for you. Because at the end of the day, Even though I consider like myself like as a generalist, as a psychologist, marriage and family therapist, there's just certain things that like I'm just not going to touch. And so majority of therapists, we're not an all for all, and so we want to make sure that we're even an initial fit. So we're going to ask like, what is the presenting concern? Because if we're not a fit, then we need to help you find somebody else that is a fit. So we're going to actually just make sure that that's a fit. Once that happens, we're going to send you a bunch of paperwork, and this is the part that always gets people, because if you don't fill out that paperwork, I always say like that's an indicator to me if you're serious or not, because it is a lot of papers to fill out. But the biggest part of it is that it's for your protection and your well-being. As licensed professionals, we are bound by a board to make sure that we have your best interest first priority, that we're making sure that we are not harmful, we are not practicing in harmful ways, and that if we are, you got to report us, right? So a lot of the paperwork is not only getting your information as far as like your family history, your information, what your contact information, your emergency person's information, but it's also giving you the whole format of like what therapy is. How long are the sessions? What is confidential and what's not? I practice in 6 states. But one of the biggest ones is like, if you tell me that you want to harm yourself, harm someone else, if you know of any children that are being abused, you're abusing children, elderly, vulnerable adults, those things are not protected under confidentiality, right? But everything else. So the paperwork is giving all of that insight and information so that you know what you're walking into and that you're consenting to treat. We can't do therapy unless you verbally and document wise consent to us actually supporting you. So this is a protective measure for you, and also to make sure that we are in our bounds as licensed professionals, that we're not going outside of our own professional guidelines. So that part can take a while, because if you're reading it, it's going to take a minute. Hopefully you're reading it. I know some people just sign at the bottom, but you're supposed to be reading it, but that's the information that happens. And then once you're done with all of that, then that's when we get into the session. And usually the first 2 sessions is understanding what the concerns are. What have you been doing that, has worked or hasn't worked? And we're going to set some goals, what we call a treatment plan. So that in itself takes about 3 sessions, right? So sometimes when people are like, I don't feel better, I've been in 3 times, we probably haven't even talked about the problem yet. We're actually understanding the problem. So you need all of that to even just be able to get to the couch or, turn on the Zoom and get there. As far as the cost, yeah, I'm not going to lie and say therapy can't be costly, especially if we're talking about like on a long-term basis. If you're going weekly or bi-weekly, it adds up like a bill. But there are some ways that you can reduce costs or, have other ways to get it paid for. So we have insurance, right? A lot of people's plans, they don't even know. I always joke with the guys of like they closed their eyes and did eeny, meeny, miny, mo and just picked a plan. They didn't read what the plan covered. So sometimes you can have a high copay or a high deductible, and that impacts how much it costs. But if we have deemed it to be a mental health condition, it has to be a disorder, a diagnosis. Then insurance can help offset the cost or sometimes pay for the whole thing. If you're working with a clinician that is just cash only, they have sliding scales. So some clinicians, they know like, income is funny, or you're at a ceiling in your income, and so we kind of base maybe our sessions on how much you earn, and we may say like for the next 6 sessions we can meet at this cost, and then we'll revisit to see we can take you up to the rate. You also have options like seeing a clinician that is not independently licensed. They're getting their licensures, like associate clinicians. Usually they are on the lower scale of cost because they're still getting their hours and they're getting supervision, but they're still very competent in what they can do to help you. So that can also help with costs. Sometimes your insurance plans have HSA, where they may give you a lump sum of money per year to use on health costs. You can use that for therapy as well. And lastly, there are organizations out there that have funds that help pay for therapy. And so Black Men Heal is one. For the ladies' side, we have the Loveland Foundation. I know Black Men Hike does definitely help brothers in need. So
Mm.
there are different organizations, and they're growing. Unfortunately, due to like the administration and some of the budget cuts, like some of the programs
Yeah.
are losing funding, which we are really working hard to maintain. But they're also here to help pay for like 4 or 8 sessions or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of ways that therapy can be paid for or helped. But honestly, like I'm glad we arrived to this conversation because I think this is one of the areas that I've seen in the weight room that has been challenging is that men struggle to say like they can't afford it. They rather just like ghost you or not talk to you. But
Mm.
like keep it 100. Like if you're like, hey, this is how much I can afford, or this is how much I can do. Is this something you can work with? Let us know. It totally may be something that we can do, even if it's like we can only see you once a month or we can see you bi-weekly. That's still better than nothing. And so being transparent about what you can afford is really going to help you get the best care that you can get. Also, if you don't know about your benefits, when you try to look for therapy, give them your information. Usually we call or use systems to tell us exactly what your benefits cover and what it's going to look like. You don't have to walk through it alone, but you just got to be open and transparent about what's
Mm.
going on. And we're not judging you by your pockets. Like we all live in America. Like it's expensive out here. So yeah, you're not doing a disservice if you're like, this is all I got. Like we'll work with it as much as we can. So give clinicians an opportunity that we're not out here just trying to take your money and buy BMWs because that's not what's going on. Like we really want to help, but we still got to make sure the lights stay on and that we can afford to go to Kava.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think that's a great point. I think just being upfront, like sometimes that first step is like saying, "Hey, I need therapy," right? And
Mm-hmm.
to your point, it might actually be your job that might be creating some of that
Yes.
stress that you need to work through. So I think being upfront and saying, "Hey, it's $75 a session. I can only, pay for 4 sessions." I think
Right.
that kind of gives, the therapist an opportunity maybe to give you some tools to kind
Yes.
of get past those, 4 sessions that you can afford until you
Yes.
get to have money or health insurance or whatever the case is, or find a program that can, help service you to get that additional help. I've
Yeah.
been, when I think about my therapy journey, I've been in a situation where I've had to pay out of pocket, which is a different feeling from
It's a different feeling.
going through insurance and maybe even getting reimbursed or right,
Yes.
or some people, like I found out, you know one of my jobs I had was that they actually offered a therapy program, so it was outside
Yes.
of just my normal health insurance, but they provide like 12 sessions. So
Yes. The
to your point,
EAPs.
yes, exactly. So I think it's important that we do look at what insurance we do have, and if we
Mm-hmm.
don't, go to Google, like you said, like Black Men Hike is, like we sponsor a couple brothers a year that are a part of our community for free therapy. There's a number of organizations out there. Just hit Google, Chat GPT, Claude, whatever you need to do to see what
Yeah.
what options you do have. So
Yeah, and also, yeah, the EAP. I forgot to mention that employee assistance program. A lot of
yep.
companies um, have like a network where they'll cover like 6 sessions. It's like brief, therapy, but that can be helpful. Even your insurance, like some insurances, if you have like a PPO program, you can actually do out of network and they'll reimburse like 65, 75%. And so some of us therapists, we actually have tools like on our website. The weight room has a tool on the website where you could put your information in. It'll even tell us like if you can get covered out of network and how much you have to pay out of pocket. So there's a lot of tools now where you just don't have to walk in blindsided. We also have a whole guide in the weight room that if you guys, want a copy of that, just DM us and we can send it to you, where it actually breaks down like the different terminology of like of the definitions of like what's in insurance plans, what's carve outs and all that. So that way, when open enrollment happens in what like the next 5 months, you'll kind of have more preparation and education on how you want to pick your plan, so that if you do need therapy or want to do therapy, it can hopefully be covered by your plan.
So we'll hop into our phase 3, which is the work. Actually being in therapy. I know we briefly kind of discussed, some of the, onboarding stuff like the paperwork and answering the questions. But for your first session, what would be what would you tell somebody to expect on their first therapy session with a therapist that they feel like is a good match?
Yeah, so the first session, we're definitely going to review the paperwork over, making sure that I understand everything correctly, that you understand the consent, what's confidential, what's not confidential. And then we're going to get into what brought you here. So I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to ask about background information. The time goes by fast in 50 minutes, to be honest. And so the first session is not really going to make you feel better unless we were able to talk about things that allowed you to, I don't want to say dump it, but leave it, right? A lot of times we're leaving what's been burdening us in therapy. Like sometimes you'll feel better after that, but we're not working miracles in the first session. We're not working miracles in the second session or third session. I say my magic starts in the fifth. I don't even know if I have any magic, but sometimes the work feels fulfilling
I'm sure you do.
by the fifth session. But yeah, the first session is literally us getting to know each other. And so I know for men, that are, the backbone of the household, they're holding everything down financially. They're like, I don't have a lot of money for us to just be like getting to know each other. Like, where's the stuff happening? That's where you have to make allowance for that. For the first couple of sessions, it's not going to feel like we're doing any work, but I have to lay the foundation down in order to understand what we're doing. So in the first session, when we wrap up, I usually say like, okay, this is what I learned of you. These are the things that it seems like you want to work on. I want you to think about between now and the next session, what are like 2 goals that you would like to accomplish with our time together? And also, what are you hoping that you can get from me? And so that way in the second session, hopefully we can goal plan and get further. By the third session, like now we're locking into like what's going on. But the first session is really just laying down the understanding of like what we're here for, what we do, what we don't do, and what is it that is burdening you, and what has been working and what hasn't. So it's not sexy, just saying. It's not a sexy session, but it's a good session that hopefully will grow into something that will be meaningful.
For sure, I can speak on that too because I know when I first started therapy, I'm like, I got I got this issue, right? Like, why
Yeah.
are you asking me
Why are you
about
over here?
my
Yeah.
relationship with this person, right? And at first, to your point, like, man, time is money, right? But I think also understanding, and hopefully this conversation brings people to ease, understanding like there's a reason, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as I got to like that third, fourth, fifth session, I realized, oh, actually, it's not because of that problem. It's actually because of something that happened maybe when I was 8 years old, right? I didn't get picked on a
Yes.
basketball team that might have stuck with me for 20 plus years or something like
Right.
that. So yeah, just I would, if I could give advice to anybody that might be interested in taking that journey in therapy is just, be patient, understand that, the end goal is to help you. So
Yeah.
it might take a little bit to get there, but it's all worthwhile if you have the right match. So
Absolutely. And just gotta give it a little bit of time.
for sure, for sure. Um, you know, I think for people when they come into therapy, I think one of the biggest things is a fear of judgment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we could just kind of speak on that. You know, what does that mean? And obviously, there's from a professional standpoint, from the confidentiality and stuff, but maybe just kind of elaborating on, this is a safe space. It's meant for us to be as open as possible. Maybe you could talk about maybe the mystifying, judgment that people might think comes with therapy.
Yeah, I think sometimes, a lot of times people are like, oh, these are professionals. They're judging me. Every little thing I do, like they're watching my mannerisms, they're watching my tone, they're doing all this stuff to like analyze me to come up with like this big condition that I may have. And that's just not true. Like, especially as a Black clinician, decolonizing therapy, it's like show up as who you are. So, I'm not expecting you to like course correct or code switch, right? Like, you could talk how you want to. People cuss in my sessions. I don't raise an eyebrow like, ooh, you said a bad word. Like, who cares? Like, just talk how you want to. You don't have to package it in a way where you feel like you're not, that we're not judging you. Yeah, we may be watching your mannerisms and all that, but we're also just trying to understand, like, because certain things that you do, you don't even realize that you're doing because you're anxious, or you're being triggered or whatever. So that's something for us to just bring to your attention of, like, when we talk about certain things, I notice like your hand goes up. When we do certain things, I notice your tone goes up or you stop talking as much. It's not for me to put a label on you. It's for me to bring it to your attention of, like, even if you don't think this is bothering you as much, like, your body language is saying something else. Let's talk about it. So a lot of times I think people feel like they have to be buttoned up to come to therapy. No, just show up as your authentic self. That's the best way to get help. And whatever it is you want to talk about it. If it's something where you're like, I don't know if I want to share this, we'll break it down. I always joke, I'm like, is it about kids? Is it about elder adults? You want to hurt somebody? If it's one of those three, you remember my rules. Outside of that, nobody's gonna know. So sometimes people just need the reminder of, like, this is literally a space they can talk it out. But also too, like, if there's something that you have said and you feel like the therapist responded in a way that you're like, I think you're judging her, call it out. Be like, I noticed like your tone changed or whatever. Like, I just feel like maybe what I said, was offensive or it was misunderstood and now I want to shut down. Give us an opportunity as human beings to let you know, like, that's not where we were at with it. Or even apologize. Like, a lot of times we all have like pre notions of how people are judging us. So we're also reading into their body language. But if we have open conversations about, like, I don't know if like translated well, or what you said, it didn't sit well with me. That's how we build a true therapeutic bond, is when we can have honesty, on both sides. So if there's something that you felt like you said or did and you didn't like how the therapist responded, just let them know. It gives them an opportunity to, let you know if that's what was happening, or, even just bring that into the room, like, that's part of like maybe the anxiety that's happening and we can address that. But yeah, just show up as yourself, honestly. Don't code switch. I said, please don't code switch. I have clients that come in their bonnets, whatever, like, just be you. And
sure.
that's the best way you're gonna feel like it's a safe space.
And I feel like that just goes back to like cultural competency too. Like, you should be able to feel comfortable with who you are. If you're trying to fix the persona you're putting on, you're not really helping your inner self. So I think if you can come to session as a person you are, 100%, I think, to your point, I think that's where you feel like you're really making change.
Absolutely.
Cool. Along those lines, how do you, as a person that's first time going through therapy, and they're going through 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions, how do they know that they're doing it right? You might question yourself, am I doing this right? How should I feel? And then what does it take to do it right as well, I guess, would be the follow-up question.
Yeah, sometimes we know we're doing it right because we feel better. We feel more confident. Sometimes healing doesn't have a feeling. Sometimes it doesn't translate into like happiness or joy, but we find ourselves being stable, right? Like, sometimes healing looks like just being stable. Like, I think a lot of times we're looking for like that heightened excitement, but sometimes I have to remind my client of, like, when's the last time you had a panic attack? When's the last time, you had a hopeless thought? And they're like, well, it's been weeks. I'm like, then that means it's working. You may not feel like this excitement where you're jumping over the moon, or you're skipping along the sidewalk, but the fact that you're not getting worse shows that what you're doing is working. And so just having those reminders or those conversations is really helpful. Also, when you find yourself like repeating certain things that you learn in therapy, or you're having like that self-talk in your head that's more positive or more solution oriented of getting you through a situation, that's how you know like the steps are working. A lot of my clients are like, I know my stuff is working because people try me every day and I have yet to go to jail. That's a win, in my opinion. Right? Like, you didn't go to jail. You can't ask me for no bail money. Right? They may still feel like, I still feel like a sucker sometimes, but overall they feel proud that they're not letting people, knock them off their square. And so that's how you know things are working. It's not going to always be like this warm fuzzy feeling, but you're going to see a difference in your actions, and that's how you know like it's working. If you feel like everything you're doing is not working, then still talk to your therapist. Don't leave your therapist. But sometimes these things are bigger than us. Like, it's bigger than just like journaling, taking long walks. Like some of this stuff is medication. Some of this stuff is a higher intensive type of treatment. And so it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It just means that this is more than just like something that you can manage on your own. You need additional support. And so that's where we come in conversation sometimes as therapists to be like, yeah, let's have that conversation again about medication. Because you've done a lot of this stuff on your own and you've been doing the best you can for 6 months, and it still seems like it's not meeting the threshold that you would like. So let's talk about some different options. But that's kind of the ways you can kind of tell therapy is working. Whether you experience joy or not, you'll start to see like your patterns and your movement change.
Cool. It looks like, so we're at 59, I think 59 minutes. Do we get kicked off IG at 1 hour? Is that how it works?
If we get kicked off, y'all can come over to YouTube. I don't know, I haven't done an IG live in so long.
Yeah, I'm over here.
Is there any questions that's popped up on the live?
Let's see. Questions, y'all? This will be the time.
Yeah, because I don't know. I haven't seen a little thing of like you're getting cut off, but.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep the conversation continuing. If we see any questions, we'll try to answer it. But we'll be on YouTube still.
Yes, or leave them on the flyer thing, and we'll answer them for sure.
For sure. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So, with that being said, I think some people feel like, when it comes to therapy, you get in there for 45 minutes, you do that, and that's it, right? And they expect that every 45 minutes they're going to get better, right?
Right.
Can you talk more about the homework and what that looks like outside of just the session you're having with your therapist?
Yeah, one thing I have learned, actually, this is my 10th year working with Black men. That's such an honor and a blessing. One thing I learned about working with Black men is that they love homework. They may not ask for it, but I think it helps them feel like they're being accountable to the work, right? So like sometimes we're talking like, yeah. And they're like, so what am I supposed to do between now and then? It's like, all right, let's give you some homework. So homework can be as, small as like a task that you're supposed to accomplish of like, maybe having a conversation with somebody, or it can even be like worksheets that we may have, or like journal prompts. Homework is very important because it's almost like we're just giving you the material to understand in therapy, but you got to go implement that outside of the classroom, right? It's like anything else. And I say life is a big multiple choice test that has like 80 different ways to ask you a question. So it's almost like you're doing the homework to prepare you for the quiz, which is like conflict resolution, relationship issues. So it's important to do the homework because that's the only way that you stay accountable to the things that you say you want to work on in therapy. If you wait, only the hour that we're talking, to do the work, you'll realize that there's not as much work being done in the session because we're usually catching up on what happened the week before, what's working, what's not, maybe adding another caveat to what's going on. And now we want to, maybe do more journal prompting to talk about it, or actually send you out there to test out some of the mechanisms that we think is working. If you don't do those things, then you're going to feel like you're just on a hamster wheel, just talking to somebody for fun. So homework is very important. If there's clinicians out here watching this, I strongly recommend, giving homework. A lot of people want to feel like they have hands-on instruction on what they're supposed to be doing in therapy. And sometimes talking is great, but for a lot of people, they need the visual. So it's funny because sometimes you will get guys like, I didn't do the homework. And I love that they're honesty, but I'm like, okay, well, it's been 3 weeks. Like, when we gonna do this homework? So sometimes, me being my brother's keeper, I'm gonna do the homework with him. All right, well, this session we ain't talking about anything else. We're gonna talk about this homework. Let's get to the homework. So sometimes they need like a tutor, right? Or like, big sis watching over their shoulder, like you answering the questions, you getting it done. That kind of accountability can even help them continue it, right? Like sometimes we really just need that extra support in getting this stuff done. Or sometimes we may like, I don't know where to start, or I'm scared. Let's talk about it. So yeah, the homework is very important. I've noticed great outcomes with Black men that get homework in between sessions. And so I highly recommend it. But you actually got to complete it. Please complete the homework.
I appreciate that insight.
That helps progress your therapy, because otherwise we're gonna be stuck.
For sure. I think that was a reality check for me when I first started. Like, oh, I got to do this. I'm like,
I
but
got homework.
I could tell the difference between like if there were, and it's not like you're writing a 15-page
Right.
essay, right? It's just utilizing tools and maybe trying some of those things in real life, et cetera, et cetera. But I definitely saw a difference between sessions that I might not do, the homework needed, and
Yes.
and then doing it right. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, you know, being held accountable doesn't have to feel degrading or anything, right? And
Yes.
I think that's huge, right? If you have a great therapist, you're going to be held accountable, but at the same time, you're going to feel like, okay, I need to do this, opposed to feeling like you're being judged, or you're being looked at less than, or whatever the case is. So, yeah, I think that's important. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
So
ask
that,
questions like, what is the homework for? Like,
yeah,
what's the purpose? Like, I think sometimes we're afraid because we think we're challenging a therapist, but sometimes we just need better insight or more details. Like, what is the purpose of this? And sometimes that even gives a little bit more encouragement to do it versus like, I'm just doing this because she told me to do it.
sure, for sure. I appreciate that. All right, so we went through the kind of getting familiar with therapy. We did like what, when do I need therapy? What does that look like? How do I search for a therapist? Then we talked about like actually going through sessions. You know, um, the fear of judgment. Am I doing this right? What it takes to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in the last stage, which is really how to end therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we know when we're done? After we've had a number of sessions.
Yeah, so it's kind of like therapy maybe getting a little stale, right? Or it seems like more like we're catching up on things, we're not working on things. Maybe you're feeling a sense of relief, or whatever's been going on, it has been completed, dismissed, finalized, like relationships, right? We can use an example of relationships. So we often get a lot of guys that come in because they're having issues with their relationship, whether it's like communication issues, infidelity on either side, or just not sure if they want to be together. So a lot of times when like whatever the resolution of that relationship has come to, typically they break up. It's kind of like, all right, well, we broke up. I processed with you. I think I'm done, right? It's like I don't think I have anything else to do. Or even your therapist, like we'll bring it up too of like we've actually met a lot of your goals, like your milestones. Like this is what you came in for, this is where we're at, this is what's been helpful. We've been in maintenance. So it's kind of like, is there other things you want to work on? Or like let's have this conversation about termination. So the cool thing about therapy is that you can be honest about when you feel like your time is coming to an end. I think a lot of people have a hard time doing that because they feel like we're judging them. But I'll tell you, the worst thing in the world is for a client to ghost us, because we're like mothers. The first thing what happened to them? Something bad must have happened if they're not, reaching out or whatever. And all in all, it's just like you just felt like you were done with us. So how when you're ready to end therapy is if you're finding yourself finding an excuse not wanting to go to therapy anymore. That may just mean like you have therapy burnout, because you can't have therapy burnout. You're kind of tired of therapy. It could be that it's a mismatch of the therapist. You find yourself having more things to talk about that's really not about yourself in therapy. It can be like current events or like other family members. It's really not about you. You guys are starting to like reduce your session times,
Mhm.
of like maybe instead of 45 minutes it's like 20-30 minutes because we're catching up. That's how we're knowing like we're coming to a successful termination, like we're coming to a successful end. Sometimes it may feel like there's a period at the end of the sentence, and sometimes it just feels like a comma that just needs to sit there for a while. If you feel like, I'm not sure therapy should end, or if therapy's coming to an end, just have a conversation with your therapist of like, I've been just feeling like kind of stuck. Like, I don't know if we're done, if I met my goals, or if I just need a break. And we can just have an honest conversation and tease that out. But there's a point where therapy is supposed to end, so it's a good thing. We just want to make sure that it's not ending for all the wrong reasons. Like, you can't afford it. You're not telling us.
Mhm.
Um, maybe you feel like you don't want to acknowledge your problems anymore, so you're just quitting. Like, we want to have those conversations if those things come up. But yeah, therapy's supposed to end, and so those are the ways that you can kind of know, like, we're really not talking about anything anymore. That's usually a telltale sign of, like, I think we're good.
No, I appreciate that analysis because I mean, I think to your point, there's so many different ways that or reasons why therapy ends, right?
Yeah,
And kind of going from a good, it could be good or it could be bad, but understanding, okay, this is the time and place, and really, in both cases, in all cases, it's really just about being transparent and honest, with your therapist, right? To your point, people your therapist is investing in you as well. So they always want
yeah,
to, at the end goal is for them, to make sure that you feel better, right?
yeah,
So, as adults, we at least owe that to our therapist to kind of say, hey, I think, I'm good. Or, even a good scenario is like, hey, we've had 10 sessions, we've talked about everything, I think you're ready to, do this on your own for a little bit,
yeah.
having those conversations. So, honesty and communication seems like is the best way to go when it's time to get to that end of, your journey with therapy.
And that's the cool part about the homework thing, right? Is because the goal of it is that whatever you're learning in session, you can apply that for the rest of your life, right? Like, it's giving you the tools to use long term. And so if your tools are working, then you're not, you're still working on yourself. So sometimes people in therapy, they use the tools, and then later down the road, they're like, these tools are not working like they used to. I need to come back in and figure out what's going on. That's okay too. So yeah, if you feel like you're able to manage everything in a comfortable way, not an ego way of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this because I don't feel like I don't want to keep having help. But if you can literally just do it and yourself, then yeah, it's okay to end. That's what we're hoping for. That's why we don't give advice. Advice leads you to have to keep coming back for the rest of your life to know what you're supposed to do. The tools is giving you to apply so that you can live the best of your life on your own terms. And that's the goal.
Okay, cool. That's really the maintenance plan. Just taking the tools that you have, um, and just utilizing them in the
Mhm.
situations that they're made for.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's how do you, from a person who might be going through therapy and therapy, the therapy sessions,
Mhm.
how do they keep from falling back into the old habits? Do you think that's just tools, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's comfortability, right? Like, if you've been doing something for a really long time, it kind of feels natural to just kind of progress back to old behaviors. I think the biggest thing that keeps us is like we don't know what's on the other side of trying new things. And so that's what's going to help you not avoid as much to revert back, because we're creatures of habit. We're gonna like go back to our old ways. But if we're open to trying something new or exploring what a different type of life looks like, that is really what's gonna help us not go back to the same thing. But if we don't have the buy-in of like something new or something different is actually gonna give us a better outcome, you're literally just gonna continue back in your old pattern. So it's like, for example, like conflict resolution. If you think every time you don't, like, cut somebody out or threaten somebody, that you a sucker if you don't, then you're never going to know what it's like to get to a conversation that actually feels like we
Mm,
both understand each other. We
hmm
both got out what we needed to, and we're actually moving in a better direction because we have a better understanding. But if
mm,
you're afraid of like that's not as fulfilling, then you're always going to end up with charges, anger management
mm,
classes, or nobody, right? And so
mm,
sometimes we just have to be okay with, we can't always predict what it's like on the other side, but I'm ready for a change. I'm ready for something new to give me a
mm.
better outcome. That is what's going to help us not always revert back to the things that brought us to therapy in the first place.
Thank you. Well, I think that's pretty much all I have. First and foremost, I wanted to just thank you, Dr. Douglas, for the work that you do,
Thank
the
you.
partnership with Black Men Hike, and this amazing conversation. You know, I I wish I was in a position where I had a resource like this to kind of get me ready for therapy and kind of let me know. So I'm hoping that this will be impactful for the folks who have had the opportunity to watch this. I don't know. I'm not sure if we're still on IG Live.
I
So
think we
just
are.
Oh, we are okay. Cool, cool.
I think
Well,
so.
that's good. Things have changed, but
Things have
um,
changed.
for sure, for sure. If there's any questions, this would be the time. If not, um, let me just really quickly look.
Yeah, while you're looking, I definitely want to give you guys your flowers at Black Men Hike. Some of the team got to hang out with you guys a little bit last year, and that was one of the most memorable moments for them. Is to, I think they were saying like even people that were like in the community, I think they were like not black people. They're like, "What's all these black men doing here?" And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, we're vibing, we're hanging out, we're hiking,
Yeah.
and I remember them coming back, and I was like, well, how many men showed up? And I think they said like 50. And, that just brought a lot of warmth to my heart that because there's so much misinformation out there that black men don't show up to stuff. And I'm not going to say they always show up because as somebody's been working with them for 10 years, there are some struggles. But when they feel safe, they show
Mm.
up in droves. And so to see how you guys have really built like such a simple system of brotherhood and how it really is a lifeline that the guys really love to be a part of, and they show up, and you make it very safe for them. Like if you guys live in the LA area, I highly recommend, or even
Thank
outside
you.
of it, please, like,
Pull
attend
up.
a hike, pull up, donate. They're doing such amazing work out there, that, I'm just grateful that we were able to connect and we were able to be a part of it, because I think a lot of our mission and stuff aligns with like how we really want to support
100%. Yeah.
black
Thank you.
men. And even for the weight room, we're in 6 states. California is our
Yep.
main hub. A lot of things that we talked about in pre-therapy, we actually have a program called the conditioning phase. We actually get you ready for therapy. Sometimes you're just not ready, but that doesn't mean you can't get something out of this. And so if you're not too sure about if you're ready for therapy or not, just come, check us out. We'll talk to you about it. We'll say like, yeah, you're ready for this, or you're not ready just yet, but we can prepare you to get there. And so you're not just out here trying to figure things out by yourself. There are spaces out here that we really are just, our doors are open and waiting for you guys to come in. So I appreciate, you guys opening your doors to us and the partnership that we have built. And I, wish you guys continued success, because I
Same.
just see it with
Same.
my own eyes of like how much you guys are like a hub of safety for black men. And we need to get y'all $1 million. That's all I'm saying.
Hey.
You guys donate.
You know what? Hey, I appreciate that. And you know what? We actually have our summer fundraiser on July 12th.
Yes.
That was a great transition right there. But if you are interested, go to our IG page and register and come out and check us out. But we're both doing good work. And like Dr. Douglas said earlier, with certain things going on with the administration and specifically helping our community, it's become more challenging.
Yeah.
So, for the folks who do have the resources, whether that's yourself or people that it's important that you please let folks know about the organizations like us, because we are really trying to heal our community so that, at one day that, we can be mentally, physically, and financially free, all that good stuff. So,
yes.
All right. So we'll end there.
Did we get any questions? No, we're good.
Let's see. Yeah, I think so. Well, let's see. I'm going to have to. Okay. Yeah, somebody just reiterating, one of our board members reiterating.
That's right.
$1 million.
Donate, you guys. Donate. I mean, we're not a nonprofit, but if you want to slide a little something, the guys always need therapy. But yes, please donate, support, come out to their fundraiser. Like I said, if you're in SoCal, even the drive is worth it, to be honest.
For sure.
With them.
And we try to hit all parts of the SoCal area. Honestly, we try to go as far north as Santa Clarita. We go as far west as Ventura County, IE, even Orange County. So if you're close, or first Saturday of every month is our monthly hike. Just check out our Instagram and our social and things like that to see what's going on. But thank you again for your time.
Hopefully you guys felt like this was helpful. If you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to go to the weight room Instagram. We always love a good DM to support.
For sure. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much, Dr.
Bye, guys.
All right. Take care. Take care, everyone.